6:32 p.m.
All right, I'm going to start us off with the recommended by Vermont League of Cities and Towns remote public meeting declaration. I, Joshua Knox, as Vice Chair of the Essex Planning Commission, find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by video conference with additional access offered through telephone. We are using Microsoft Teams for this remote meeting. All members of the Planning Commission have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through Teams, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if desired, participate in this meeting. Planning staff will provide instructions for public participation using Teams before the hearings are opened. B, providing public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access the meeting on Teams with a computer, smartphone, or regular telephone in our posted meeting agenda. Instructions have also been provided on the town website at www.essexvt.org/agenda center. Click on Your Government, then Agendas and Minutes, and navigate to the desired meeting site. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please use the chat feature with Teams, that's pressing Alt+H, email, or call Owiso. And her email is omakuku@essex.org, or the phone number is area code 802-878-1343. D, continuing the meeting if necessary. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, it will be continued to a time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance of all PC members participating in the meeting. So Joshua Knox, present. David Raphael.
Present.
Johnny. Alden, John Alden, sorry. John Mangan.
Present.
Ned Daly.
Here.
John Schumacher.
And I can just make a quick reminder for anybody who has joined the conversation since we got started, please remember to mute yourself if you are not actively speaking, and then remember to unmute yourself if you would like to speak or if you're called on.
All
so
right.
We'll give everybody a second to do that and make sure everybody is muted so we don't get the feedback. And at this time, I'm going to mute you if you are not muted at this point. If you have problems unmuting yourself, please let staff know through the chat function or by giving us a call as noted. All right, I'm all set, Josh.
All right, I would just add before we look at the agenda proper that for the purpose of recording minutes, you will be asked to provide your first and last name and your address. When listening to the meeting, and this is what Darren just said, please keep your phone or computer on mute to prevent interruptions. For agenda items, when it is appropriate for the public to speak, please unmute your phone or computer and introduce yourself before requesting the floor from the chair. So at this time, prior to having any public comments, I will provide the oath to the public. So if everyone could, in their own way, swear or affirm that any testimony they provide this evening will be true to the best of their understanding and ability.
Will do.
All right. And, and we'll remember if someone comes in after the fact, they will inform me that they will be present to secure the interested party status. I'm getting an echo there from somebody. So we have some items on the agenda this evening. First, and I'll just lift off the agenda. The first is public comments. This will be followed by the site plan and master plan amendment public hearing for Eurowest Retail Partners, followed by a sketch site plan public hearing for a proposed planned unit development residential. And then, of course, we'll have the minutes and other business. So before we get to the amendments and sketch plans and such, do we have any public comments for things that are not already on the agenda? And again, please indicate your first and last name and your address for the purpose of the minutes. Thank you.
Hello, this is Darren. Excuse me. Marie Froschel, you are on. Marie, this is Darren. I've muted you a couple times because we are getting a lot of feedback from you. So in a moment, please go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll try to hear your comment. So go right ahead.
I'm Jennifer and John Churchman is now joining.
The camera.
Are you talking to me?
Well, I believe we're trying to talk to Marie Froschel. So everyone who's not Marie, briefly mute your microphones, please. Thank you.
And I believe the feedback might be coming from Marie. So Marie, I've muted you again. Try that one more time and make sure there's no other noise in your room if you can. It sounds like there's a lot of echo in your room.
Can you hear me? I've got earphones on. Maybe I should turn the sound down.
That's a little better, Marie, so try that. Go ahead, Marie. I think we can hear you now.
Is that any better?
Yes.
I got smaller.
Go ahead, Marie.
All right, I'm trying to turn the camera on, but when I hit that where it says turn on camera and I click on it, nothing happens.
We can see you, Marie. It looks like you're on twice. We can see your camera on your muted side.
Shall we try to get her telephone number and call her?
That might be better. Marie, you are also on twice. It looks like the second one is what's giving us the feedback. So I'm going to remove one of them, which I think is the one that doesn't have your video. If you lose touch, just try to get back into the meeting.
John Churchman
Is
And
now
welcome.
exiting.
Okay, so here you go. We're going to remove you, Marie. And it looks like we lost your video on that. So try turning your video on again. But in any case, we can also hear you now that you are unmuted. So go ahead and speak what you were going to say.
I was just going to say there's a line through the camera. And when I click on that to turn the camera on, nothing happens.
Okay. It looks like it was working for us now. We can see you now. You might not be able to see yourself, but I can see you. You just came on.
Okay, I can see you up in the corner, Darren.
Okay, great.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're all learning here. And if you're done, were you going to have any a comment other than trying to connect?
Not at this time. I really am on to listen to the LeClerc application.
Okay, great. Go ahead and mute yourself, and we'll get to that one later.
Okay, are there any other public comments, again, to items not already warned on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to the second agenda item, which is site plan and master plan amendment public hearing. Peter Edelmann, doing business as Eurowest Retail Partners Limited, proposal to construct a 22,500 square foot interactive and immersive arts building addition to Building 1 located at 21 Essex Way in the mixed-use planned unit development district and business design control overlay tax map 92, parcel 1. And I believe it's customary at this point for staff to start their presentation of the report. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Josh. And I will be presenting for staff. This is Darren Schibler. As Josh mentioned, this is a fairly large project in the middle of the town center. It is a 22,500 square foot addition to Essex Experience or Essex Outlets Building 1, which is the one in the northwest portion of the property. and it is adjacent to Hannaford. I'm going to share my screen and show the site plan instead of the agenda, so we can all see that. And give me just a moment to have that up. All right, so as you can all see, this is the outlet's property, or the Essex Experience. And let me transition to the proposed plan. So these are existing conditions, and this is proposed. So this would be in the rear of the building 1. The addition is 22,500 square feet. The applicants will also be using approximately 22,950 square feet of the existing building for a total of 44,450. And the proposed use for this is an immersive, interactive, and multimedia arts museum. The plan also includes a rooftop diner, which I will show you in the rendering here. So in the top right center of the screen here, you should be able to see side of the building and the rooftop diner that is proposed. Here's another perspective. This first one is from the east side of the building on a future extension of Commonwealth Avenue. This is from the north side of the building on the service road that runs to the rear of Hannaford. Site work involves realignment and future extension of Commonwealth Avenue on the east side of the property of the parcel. So let me show, or of the building. So you can see that that would be running along an existing road here, but slightly reconfigured from what is there today. And there are also some associated landscaping, lighting changes. The applicants have requested a height waiver for the building itself. Most of the building will be 40 feet, which is the 40 feet high, which is the maximum for the zoning district. But portions of this decorative sort of wave in the parapet and in the roof will exceed 40 feet, as will the rooftop diner. In general, staff is very supportive of the proposed use and the layout and the building in general. A couple of things we had spoken with the applicants about in terms of potential changes include making a slightly more welcoming pedestrian entrance on the east side, which will be a major thoroughfare in the future as the town center develops, with that extension of Commonwealth coming from the north. And we would love to have seen, or we would like to see some extension of this arcade or some other feature on that building that draws people in. We also note that though the building is large and a little massive and sort of flat in terms of how it appears, it is mostly hidden behind the existing building, as you can see from the south. And you can still see the building behind it, but it looks a little more interesting, visually interesting from that side. But on this east and north side, it's a little bit of a sheer wall. So we would feel that the ground level articulation in the facade would help mitigate some of that. And a couple other things that we wanted to note. I'm going to pull up the site plan here. The use of perpendicular parking along this extension of Commonwealth does mitigate some of the loss of parking by adding the building to the existing parking lot. We want to encourage the applicants to think perhaps about parallel parking because perpendicular parking is shown to have some hazards as people can't see oncoming traffic when they pull out. The same is true of angled parking, which is what we already have in the town center. So we recognize that'd be a change from what we currently see, but it would be a little safer. And that would also give a little more space perhaps for landscaping or other streetscape features. And the last note that we have is that the lighting that they have proposed, let me pull up that lighting plan, and apologies for the visual noise. So the lighting that they've proposed is more of a traditional sort of industrial looking street light. We would propose that the applicants use the existing lighting that's used throughout the other town center streets, which is more of a decorative sort of candelabra look that has a space for banners that can be hung on that post. Other than that, we really like the project and look forward to hearing the applicant's presentation.
At this time, I will hand the virtual gavel back over to Chair Dustin Brusso, who has arrived.
And I will note that at 6:49 p.m.
And Dusty, we can't hear you quite yet. I am going to note I'm seeing some comments in the chat here, some questions from the public about this application. I want to note that we will have a period for public comment after the applicant's presentation and questions from the Planning Commission. So please hold those questions, and we will try to have them spoken so that everybody can hear them. But if you're having trouble speaking at that time, we will relay those questions.
I'm on, Darren.
Great. Thanks, Dusty. Go for it.
I apologize for joining late on this. Darren, what point are we at right this very moment?
Oh, sorry. We had just heard Darren's report on the, or Darren's staff report.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
So who's presenting at this point do we have questions for applicant? If not,
Paul O'Leary was going to start for the applicant.
go ahead, Paul.
All right. So thank you for that overview, Darren. So just a few items. I would like to emphasize that we are seeking approval tonight with conditions. And we have a few issues to talk about: the height of the building, the landscape and the Commonwealth streetscape, which we'll address, and then the issue of the number of parking spaces. So we're going to start off by turning it over to Robert and Teresa and let them explain just what the proposed use is that we're here to discuss.
Hello, it's Robert Davis. I'm one of the co-founders of Babarusa. I'm from North Ferrisburgh, Vermont. And I thought Teresa and I would just take a moment and give a brief overview of the concept. What this project involves is the construction of a new building, which will mostly be used to house the exhibit, which you're going to hear a little bit more from Teresa in a moment. And then the existing building will be housing various other, the corporate office, some workshop and fab component of our business, a gift shop, and that's pretty much the whole operation. And I wanted to just say that we really appreciated the feedback we got from staff last week. They were very helpful with their perspective. Darren, Owiso, and Sharon, and there may have been other people as well who commented that we didn't get to interact with, but we feel like their comments, we'd like to, after Teresa orients you a little bit to what's going to be going on inside the building, Alex Halpern from Freeman is going to tell you some of our response based on staff feedback, at least as far as the east side. So Teresa is going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about the concept.
Great. This is Teresa Davis from North Ferrisburgh, and I'm going to take about 2 minutes to just kind of talk about the concept of immersive art and what the actual art exhibit inside that building is going to be. So just to orient everybody, usually when you hear the word art, a lot of people think of a painting in a frame on a wall, or they think of a sculpture on a pedestal where you have to keep your distance from it. But immersive art, however, is really very different. When you walk into any immersive space, the art surrounds you. So it's not just on the walls, but it's actually covering all of the walls, the ceiling, and the floor. And it creates a three-dimensional experience where you're actually inside of the art. the artwork. So it would be, if I'm going to try to paint the picture really quickly, it would be a little bit like walking around inside of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, or maybe being dropped down the rabbit hole into Wonderland. So immersive art is the kind of experience that engages all of your senses and also wakes up your sense of joy and play. So it's in a very large scale space where you've got multiple rooms or nooks or passageways and portals. You can't help but get excited as you're, turning the corner and getting to explore and discover these dozens of amazing artist created environments. So everything here would be original. It would not be a copy of anything. It would come out of the mind of a Vermont artist, local artist, and we're really excited about engaging our creative community. Immersive art spaces are also very interactive. So visitors are not just spectators, but they're welcomed in to be participants, and in some cases, even co-creators who can make some temporary or lasting impacts on the space. Over the last few years, this immersive art form has sprung up in a lot of new ways in a few spots around the world. And we've been able to see how successful these types of places have been. We think it's an amazing fit for Vermont. People flock to see these places and end up leaving really kind of euphoric and inspired. And it's even experiences like this have been shown to actually alter people's brains in a really positive and wonderful way. So immersive art can have a pretty big impact both on individual and also on community-wide well-being. So that's just a really quick, couple of minutes to give you a taste of the concept. And Robert had a few more comments.
Yes. I think what I'll do is go ahead and invite Alex Halpern to address some issues that we, as we're listening and responding to staff comments, that some things that it sparked. Alex is from Freeman French Freeman, and he along with some of our artists that are integral to our project, took that feedback and have come up with some possible things that we're exploring as we explore this space in Essex and other alternate options for the site.
Hi, it's Alex Halpern. Are you guys everybody able to see me? Oh, great. Hi. Alex Halpern with Freeman French Freeman Architects in Burlington, Vermont.
Hi, Alex. This is Darren. Real quick, sorry to butt in, but if you want to share your screen, I've made you a presenter, so you can do that. I can also share what you've sent me from my screen.
That would be excellent, Darren. I was planning on that. If you could pull that email up. The last one, I think, has all of our images. If you scroll down to the bottom image, we could start there.
Okay. Just a minute to pull that up.
Alex, you seem relieved for that.
Yes, I didn't have it pulled up. This is my first town hall meeting virtually, so pretty exciting. I like how you guys have organized it and have the lay of the land. It's good.
Thank you.
All right. Just make sure that I've got that ready to go. Sorry, I actually didn't realize there were multiple photos in that email, so here we go. I'll pull the first one up and then get the rest ready for you.
Okay. Not seeing it.
All right, it should be showing up now.
Oh, great. Are you able to scroll down to the bottom image first? It's a hand sketch looking down on the plan.
Yes, let me grab that one. Apologies for the technology
All right.
scramble here. So the hand sketch. This one?
Great, yes. So Dan was mentioning earlier about the flat facade on the east elevation of the building, and that being a new roadway as the site develops. How could we articulate that a little bit more? And one thing we've been talking about with the Davises and the creative team is maybe we could activate that by possibly bringing the diner down from the roof and putting that onto the side of the building as a type of bump out, so that could have some retail activity and really activate that street front there. Maybe have a plaza around it. If it was possible to keep the diner on the roof and bump something out, maybe that's just some type of bump out, like say a small coffee shop, a newsstand, ice cream stand, something like that to really, if you look to the left, there's a big colonnade with an overhang roof. So it's an extension of that and starts to hint at the excitement of what's going on at this site. So this was the concept sketch from the creative team. And if we go back to the other image you brought up, Darren, and these are concepts. We're just in the beginning stage of trying to articulate that facade a little bit more.
Okay, let me find that one. Apologies, got a lot of different things going here. We just go to the email. It's harder to see.
That's good.
Yeah,
so
it's a little harder to see all the.
Yeah. No, that's good. So in this, the road actually does come up a little bit. So in looking at this, we've made a little bit of an amphitheater stair to bring you down to the floor level of the building, and then create a relative flat plaza, and then are showing that diner as an element. And it could be the diner, it could be just a bump out of the building, but really getting that area activated. Maybe there's some tables and chairs. And if you look along the grass that's close to the road, we've included some parallel parking spaces there. So as you drive in, maybe you can pull over, jump out and get that ice cream or get that coffee, or go to the quick stop there. And then the next two images are just different angles of that same view. Again, things may shift left or right, but we thought this, we thought this was a way to start engaging that. What we need to look at is how this building interacts with the configuration of the metal panels. So it's, we think this is a great concept to pursue, and curious on your feedback, Darren, and your team.
Thank you, Alex. I'm going to hand this back to the Planning Commission chair for now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions at this point for any of the applicant team? Not everybody at once.
John Mangan, I don't have any questions.
Joshua Knox, I don't have any questions.
This is Shu. I got one minor question. Are you, Alex, were you saying you would do the diner, you're proposing a diner both at the street level and on the roof, or are you giving it as an option?
So it's
an alternative.
Like, am I still audible?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's quite likely that if the diner goes down to the ground level, it may not be on the roof. I think that's the Davises can chime in, but that will likely be a financial decision. And as we explore this a little more, it might just be that the diner was really a real image piece, and we're seeing it as an exciting location on the ground too that may serve the same function. So it might be an either or.
This is Teresa, and one of the things we just want to mention, the reason the diner is there is because a member of our creative team actually has a very well and very good condition 1950s diner in storage on a property. So this is not something that we would build new. This is an existing diner that would be restored. And so we think it could be really a nice piece. And our creative team is equally excited about the rooftop option or the street level option. We feel that we're still in the middle of our cost analysis. And so I think at this stage, we're looking for approval or consideration of both of those possibilities. either or, I guess it would end up being. If the diner would end up back on the roof, if we would conclude that we would go that direction, I think we would then propose just a built out bump out of some other kind of small shop that, like Alex was mentioning, to be on that east side street level for more customer engagement.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Ned, any thoughts?
No, I'm fine at this point. I don't, either concept, I find it very interesting and intriguing. I kind of love to see something like this come to fruition, because I think these people are obviously dealing with the whole changing art field. It's pictures hanging on a wall in a museum just aren't, that's not where we're going to be 15 years from now. And this is sort of one step that's moving away from them, and I think it's great.
Okay, thanks. John Alden.
I'm kind of in favor of the diner as an element on the grade level, just because the whole rest of the building seems to not really. I mean, it's a neat looking building, but it doesn't engage the people at the street level really. And this corner is right at the, if you're coming down the new road from up above there, this is the first piece of the Essex experience that you're going to get to, and it's a very intriguing building, but with the diner or the eatery on the roof, it makes it an internal experience and not really something that the public would feel like they can partake in unless they go in and do the experience inside the building, I think. And you might be able to get up there if, just going up to have something to eat, but it gets a lot more punch if it's on the ground for the whole rest of the Essex experience. So I would vote for keeping it on the ground. That's me, but the building's very interesting. I'm not as concerned that you can't see it behind, if you're in the rest of the, let's say, area to the south, or the west. I'm not as concerned that looking over the tops of the other buildings you won't see it, because it's going to be tall. You'll see it behind the other buildings until you get right up to it. So this is going to be a game changer in terms of the imagery that you have to look at when you're in the rest of the outlet center, the Essex experience, and you're looking around. You will see this, and so the color. I kind of wish the colors were on the renderings, because then I think you'd really feel the power of it. Those pictures that were presented with the metal panel examples are great, but I think if we could see that on the actual building, you would be blown away. It would be very cool. So I wouldn't worry too much about hiding it behind the rest of the buildings.
Great. Thank you. David, any thoughts?
I'm good, thanks.
At this point, I think if we don't have anything else, any other additional questions, I would take a motion to open the public hearing.
I move we open the public hearing.
Moved by Josh, seconded by
Shu.
Seconded by Shu. All those in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing is now open. So folks, if you want to offer comment or question, you can do it through the chat window, as Darren has said, or you can raise your hand electronically, and Darren will see you, or I'll see you, and we'll get your comments on record. So I think we have an electronic indicator. Darren, do we have some questions in the chat window?
Yes, so we had Abby Nelson had a couple questions. Abby, are you able to speak and go right ahead? We do actually have the raise hand function for some people. Looks like Microsoft just added that. But Abby, since you chimed in early, why don't you go ahead and make sure to unmute yourself before you speak?
Yeah, I am here, Abby Nelson, Lost Nation Road. 3 questions, if it's fair. What is displaced by the expansion into Commonwealth Ave? What is the internal building use? I understand the interactive art, but the importance of having the roof be over 40 feet limit. And in looking at the drawings as a resident, it looks like a very imposing behemoth. And the concept of having a diner at the bottom of it, to me, invites the public to experience something that is related to the art, but is not the art, so that someone could enter sort of on a soft level to say, what is this thing? And I'm just having a meal. What else is there? And so the diner would be a portal, if you will, to the experience of the art. But from a distance, the building without windows looks like something landed. Just being honest.
Thank you, Abby. Dusty, I can respond at least to the Commonwealth, the question about expanding on Commonwealth, or the applicants, or Paul can probably do that as well.
Take a swing at it, Darren.
Great. So I'm going to share my screen again just so we can see what's going on with the site plan. So Abby, to answer your question, I'm going to pull up the existing conditions. So you can see here the existing drive already sort of runs between those 2 buildings, but it's not quite aligned with the future extension of Commonwealth coming from the north. So the applicants...
Darren, we're not seeing you. I'm not seeing you. There we go. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. And if anybody else can't see that, please chime in, let me know. So the existing drive here is not aligned with Commonwealth, so the applicants are proposing just to essentially shift that over into some of the what is currently green space. Right now there are, I think, 2 or 3 crabapple trees, a little bit of barberry, or sorry, European burning bush, and some cedars. So those would be taken up a little bit by the roadway and the parking, which you can see here. But a lot of the landscaping will either be retained and possibly replaced and enhanced as part of the project. So a lot of what's happening is just more parking is coming in under this proposal. And I will let the applicants speak to questions about internal building use that requires the roof to be high and the imposing nature of it.
This is Teresa. I'd be happy to speak to the height of the building. So one of the reasons that it would be that high is because we are going to have 2 floors for immersive art experiences. And some of the things on the 2nd floor will have more community style use. So it will be all part of the immersive exhibit. And what we have found in analyzing and looking at others is that elevation and the ability to have some very sort of large spaces and juxtaposed with some very small spaces actually really makes the experience very, very unique and significantly more powerful. It allows for a lot more range of possibilities of just building and room configuration in addition to just the art experiences as well. It just gives you an entirely different experience than if you were in one level building with like a 16-foot height. It's night and day. So having that space will actually, I think, be a giant enhancement to the actual result of the experience. So that would be what I would say about the height.
And the only thing I would add in terms of your above the 40 feet on the roof is that, Peter Edelmann has pointed out to us that when he's on the roof of the theater, that on a clear day, you can see the lake, you see the mountains off to one side and you can see the lake. We think there's a great opportunity to just make this, where there could be a patio or something on the roof, that if we were given extra access, we could make a memorable experience for people with the natural beauty that houses this whole complex.
And I just want to say that both Abby and then a couple other people, I didn't catch your names, have mentioned having the diner on the ground level. And we've really are, like I was saying, our creative team also thinks that would be a great idea for the points that both of you have made. And additionally, we think that where it would be located would be near the gift shop portion of the exhibit, so that someone without purchasing a ticket to the exhibit could be able to visit both the gift shop and the diner. And that, you're right, that could be like a very soft welcoming of people who are just maybe in the center for another reason.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Darren, can I make a comment?
Go for it, Peter.
Peter Edelmann from Eurowest. Just a few comments in regard to the height. And Paul, you please correct me, but Paul O'Leary, I believe from Route 15, the elevation of this site is actually 10 to 12 feet lower than the highway. So when you're driving, you're losing almost 10 to 12 feet of height visibility. And in regard to the scale of the building, it is really not a behemoth dropped into the center, because the movie theater itself is nearly twice its size and the same height. So it's in keeping with the scale of another major feature in the center.
This is Abby Nelson as a follow-up. Thank you for all the explanations. I understand that, and yet, as a resident, you could imagine that somebody who maybe has not a lot of experience with art, buildings, whatever, that seeing something like that from Route 15 might feel like something weird is happening. I mean that in the best possible way, but in some ways you could say, hey, let's go look at that. And in some ways you could say, what the heck is happening? So if you want that response, then I think you will get it. If you had some sort, the thing that Essex Cinema has is a big sign that says what it is. And that's how they know it's a theater, as opposed to this building, which doesn't have windows and doesn't have a sign, and maybe there's a plan for that, but it's not obvious in the pictures. I'm just reflecting. I could go either way on it.
Okay.
Thanks, Abby. This is Dustin again. Looks like we have Mr. Churchman, John Churchman, had a question. Don't know if he's still on, if he wants to join us and offer comment.
And this is Darren. If you are trying to speak, make sure to unmute before you start speaking.
Hi, I have unmuted. This is Jennifer Churchman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So my husband, John Churchman, and I own the Art House Gallery, which is also in the Essex Experience. And we just wanted to come in and offer our support. We've been watching this project as it has matured, and we're really happy and really thrilled that anything to promote the arts within Vermont with things that are interactive and as a draw. We really feel, after being artists in Vermont for over 25 years and being part of all of the art organizations, that this would be a really positive thing, not only for Vermont, but definitely for Essex. So we just wanted to kind of chime in with our support and let you know who we were and where we were within the Essex Experience.
Thank you. Do we have any additional? Go ahead.
Hi, this is Awiso. I just wanted to say I love the directions that you're going in right now, whether it's the diner. I love the experiential portholes that you have, that sort of secret entree in for, I mean, you could have them at multiple heights for kids and, you know, just really engage the public that way. And the diner being down there, of course, does everything that everyone has mentioned. And I also just wanted to point out that the area in front on the site plan that you that the second one, Darren, that you put up of the second set of drawings, those what have been proposed potentially as parking spaces would actually make probably a perfect drop-off area, because you might have people who have mobility issues that might need that that curb to directly enter either the diner or the or Barbarossa.
Excellent.
So
Okay,
great ideas. Keep them coming.
This is Sharon.
Hang on, Sharon.
Sorry.
I want to check and see if there's anybody else in the public that has questions or comments. We'll go back to staff in a minute, but I don't want to override anybody else. And it looks like Brian Sheldon has a question.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering if one of the reasons for the height waiver is so that you could get good views from up there from within the restaurant.
Yes.
That was the original thinking.
Yep.
That was the original thinking, is to capitalize on the views.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would make it, as well as, of course, the art exhibit as a draw, but they getting a restaurant with high views of all of Chittenden County would be a great draw for Essex. So.
Okay, so do we have any additional comments from the public at this point? Questions or comments? If you have more, feel free to add.
Yes. This is Jim Berniger.
Hey, Jim, go ahead.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't. I must tell you that it's Jim Berniger, 20 Carmichael Street. So I'm a adjacent resident of this development, which would be the most exciting thing I have seen in the 4 years that I've had the fortune of living up here. I think in many ways it will distinguish us significantly. And I love the fact that the building provokes a sense of curiosity, because we need that. But it's designed in such a way that I think it could be a signature landmark for Essex. I've been looking for the years for the building that separates us, and this would do it. And the concept behind the building is the thing that I find so exciting. This was a whole new concept before we were introduced into this concept, into the prospect of immersion art, and trying to understand what it meant. Over the last several months, I guess the last month or so, I've had an opportunity to reach out to a diverse number of people. They get it. And so I'm really excited that Peter is willing to, and the Davises are willing to look at this site as an expansion into this area. I think it's going to be a great asset for this town. And I will say first, we have not had a chance in the Economic Development Commission really to review this process, because we have not been together yet. So I'm not speaking for them, but I plan to review this, and I'm sure we're going to get a real sense of enthusiasm from the whole group. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, I would like to hold right now on public input, and I want to bring this back to the commission for a little bit. The public hearing is still open, so we will roll back to you if you have a question. Just be patient with us. We're still working on the logistical process. Commissioners, questions or concerns with the staff report and the application as it's before us? Do we have anything that we want to drill into? Ned, you've got to have something. You don't let me down.
And I Sorry, but you know, this is expanding the vision in the ways that I have always wanted us to do.
Okay.
You know, there may be some tweaks with some parking on the one street, but you know, the challenges for the developers and the designers and all to make sure that the entry is such that it'll want to draw the people back there. But I think, you know, I think they're definitely going in the right direction, and you know, seeing a structure like this will certainly pique a lot of people's curiosity and interest, and you know, I think it's a good thing for the whole area.
Great. Commissions. Let's change the order a little bit. John Alden, you always have a lot to say, so let's put you up in the. Let's get you on target first.
Well, I agree with just about everything that I've heard tonight so far. I'm a little curious as to what the actual views would be from the restaurant on the roof, the diner. It looks like it's generally set up to aim south, so you're kind of looking down the state, the real views of the mountains. You know, it's interesting. This building is essentially just below my office, so I know what they'll be looking at, and I'm wondering what you'll really see. You might get to see Camel's Hump. I'm not sure. You can look up and over and see Mount Mansfield. You might be on the patio looking, you know, over the wall there, but I'm not sure. I think it would be easy to figure it out with somebody in a drone. You could probably figure that out in a couple of minutes. If the diner stays on the roof, and I don't know that it will. I kind of like it on the ground, but having it on the roof would be very exciting. It's just a more internal experience than an external experience for others than those in the building. As far as whether you can see it from Route 15, the whole building itself, I know it's tall, but it is kind of set down in a hole. When I leave my office at 7 Carmichael and walk to Hannaford's, I have to go down a hill, and I bet it's more than 10 or 12 feet. And then we're quite a ways up, you know, it's quite a ways up to Route 15 from my office. So I'm guessing that you'll have a really tough time actually seeing this building from Route 15. Again, the whole area was modeled when we did the Essex ETC. So if somebody was creative with some technology, they could probably figure that out pretty fast. But I don't think you're going to see it, especially as Commonwealth gets built out a little bit.
Great. I was about to say all set. I should have known better.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the facades. I know they're going to be interesting, but they are blank, or you know, they're a big wall. So the colors, the activation, the fact that the skin looks like it's getting peeled off in different places, I think is really great. It may take some other features to create a sense of scale that isn't just a big wall, but clearly they're on the right path, and I agree with all the comments that have said this building has the potential to really change, you know, some things. I think Peter has always seen this, the Essex outlets or the Essex experience as a destination, a regional draw, and this building, you know, whatever it ends up looking like, this could do it. This really could do it. So I think those are all positive things.
Excellent. Now are you all set? Okay. I'm going to assume yes. Moving forward. Shu, how are you feeling on this?
Yep. Got a kind of a squirrely mouse that likes to click twice when I don't want it to. I pretty much ditto to everything that John Alden just said. I wish I could be, wish I could have said some of this stuff before he did, but that's the way it goes.
Sorry, I'll let you next time first.
I really like the diner on the ground level also, but you know, I would I'd be okay if it ended up being on the roof and we had to provide a waiver for it. But if it was on the ground level and it, that sketch that was presented by Alex earlier would be great, with the portals and everything like Louisa said. But it'd be great if there's some rooftop access to take advantage of some of those views. I agree. The large wall expanses, I think, are a little bit of a problem, but I can get over it. I mean, we've had applications previously that were at sort of higher levels on this entire ETC site, with higher waivers allowed, way higher than the top of this waiver that we're looking at. So I really don't have a problem with the waiver at all. And I do think that the Essex Cinemas building, I remember when this was just an open field when I was a kid. The Essex Cinemas building certainly is a sort of a block dropped fairly close to the street level, off of Essex Way, and it does have a sign out front and some really nice landscaping. It really is sort of blends in. But if you were talking about this new building as being a block dropped in the back there where it's fairly low, I don't think it makes any impact at all. I think I'm not worried about the height or the blockiness of it. It's not going to be that visible. Again, John, you already covered that. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. I do like the idea of some kind of rooftop access if we're going to have it up that high, because I think that's a draw to allow people to have that sort of view from up there. I know it is pretty amazing. You can see all the way out to the lake and pretty far. And my guess is you probably can get a glimpse of the south side of Mount Mansfield. That's all I got.
Great. John Alden, you had another comment?
Yeah, sorry. I had some comments on the parking, which is, for a big building like this, right at that major new entry into the Essex Experience, it feels like it's going to be busy with things happening, and it feels like the 90-degree parking on both sides was a little tight to the building, and I liked the angled parking a lot more. Maybe there's a little piece of it if the diner goes down there that don't have any parking there, and you give the pedestrians a little bit more room. But I think we don't want to cram that place full of asphalt just to get in a few more parking spots. I'd rather see people understand that coming to the Essex Experience is a place where the parking happens in a central location and they walk to all the things they want to go to.
Excellent. Okay, now can I move on? All right.
Can I chime in for a minute?
Not yet.
Okay.
Be patient. John Mangan, how are you feeling on this right now?
Overall, I'm very supportive of this. I think the entire community has said that the outlets need an update, and I think this is it. So, and personally, I absolutely prefer the diner on the roof. I think that's unique. I think it would add to it being a destination. So I have no problem with the waiver on that. It's just a personal opinion, but nobody else has that around here, and I think it's another reason that people would want to go there and make it a very popular place. So that's it for me.
Excellent. David, you're on.
So I'm completely fine with the application. I think it's great. The only thing I would suggest they spend some time playing with is just some protrusions and articulations on those big walls. It's an art experience, and I think that's a blank canvas. I know the metal panels will be great, especially if they're different colors, but I think that's a blank canvas where there could be some permanent installations. I served on the Echo board for years downtown, and the comment we always got was people loved the front of our building, but the left side where the Rubenstein School is was just a big brick building, and people hated coming down from downtown Burlington to the waterfront and just seeing that brick facade. I know this will be slightly different, but I think there's a huge opportunity to have some 3D things coming off of that wall, some portholes, some windows, whatever can be done to just really make that an art experience itself. That's the only comment I would have. Other than that, I think this is fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you. Josh.
A lot of dittoing here. I think it's a fantastic project. I'm really in favor of it. I would just put my vote on the side of the diner on the ground, the floor level, to activate the street. I like that idea. And a point of clarification about the waiver for height. That wouldn't just be for the diner. That's for ornamental things as well, right? So if we move the diner to the ground, we'd still have to do a height waiver. Is that correct, Darren?
Yes, the level of height waiver you would need for the ornamental pieces is a little less than the diner itself, but ultimately you'll still be issuing a height waiver for those wavy parts of the facade.
Okay, I mean that was all I had. I'm all set. Very supportive of this.
Excellent. So before I go back to the public, I'll just offer my 2 cents. And I actually like the idea of putting something on the roof and something on the street level. I would suggest with the street level, we talk about, just a coffee kiosk or something like that, similar to what is across from Lunix on Church Street, something of that scale that makes it accessible, that makes it something that people go and engage in all the time, routinely. But I do like the idea of putting the more involved structure up on the roof. I think that's a ditto to whoever said it, but that's a unique concept. And it also gives in my mind, it gives me a much better hat or hook to head on as far as a waiver. I'm not sure that I would embrace a waiver for ornamental structures, but we have an actual use for it. It makes it a lot more palatable to me. I would like Darren, if we're talking about this, when we start talking about this, the waiver, we kind of left it, the language that was proposed so far is kind of open-ended. And I wouldn't want to waive the height restriction of 40 feet I wouldn't want it to be an open-ended waiver. And it reads as that at this point. So that would be something I'd want to lock down on. So staff, Sharon, Lisa, or Darren, do you have any additional comments you want to add to this before we go back to the public?
I'd like to just say that I'm supportive of letting them have an option of putting it on a restaurant on the roof and or ground level. And I like your idea, Dusty, of doing something in both places. I think I heard earlier in the discussions that there might be some financial concerns. So keeping an open-ended waiver in case in the future those financial concerns eased up, if this ended up taking off, they would still be able to go forward with it. So I just wanted to chime in on that. That's it.
Darren, Awisa?
Nope, I appreciate all of the comments, and I think that the applicants are really open and willing to explore new things. They've shown that, and they've got a talented architect, and I feel as though, they're really vested in making this an amazing part of the Essex community.
Okay.
I do have a couple quick comments, Dusty.
Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah. So totally hear you on the height waiver. That makes perfect sense. I did want to add, and I neglected to mention this at the beginning, we got a late-breaking memo from Public Works just adding a few more things into the staff report, which I can read into the record. But essentially, it relates to traffic fee being identified as $27,700 based on 277 per PM peak trip, and also a request that any special events that happen in this building get a special events permit so that they can assess additional traffic beyond the anticipated normal levels, and that they agree with the design of Commonwealth Avenue extension, and also that the stormwater ponds. The applicant needs to verify that the stormwater ponds that are going to be used to the south of the outlets, that they can accommodate the additional flow that might be needed, and amend the maintenance agreement that is in place. And last thing, there's a correction to the lot coverage. The staff report had it at 68.7. It's actually 66 currently, going to 66.2% with this proposal. That's it.
Okay. The applicant, Paul, or anybody, do you guys want to have any other comments? I'll go back to the public in a second.
Yes, I have a couple comments just on the proposed conditions. We are okay with eliminating the parking along Commonwealth, or at least converting it to parallel spaces. That does allow us to do a little bit nicer streetscape. We've hired Mike Busher from TJ Boyle to work on that with Freeman French Freeman. So obviously, if in the future we have a parking problem, we still have the capability to come back and add those additional spaces along Commonwealth. We will still, however, realign the top of Commonwealth so it matches up with Boves. So that piece will get done. So that intersection will get done. We just won't carry the parking spaces all the way down. We would suggest on condition number 3B that we write that to require that we come back to the staff with a new streetscape and new landscaping plan along Commonwealth for their approval. All right, we've talked a lot about what this might look like. Hopefully we'll flush out our plans a little bit better and be able to present a nice streetscape that will look great for the town and the staff will approve. Other than that, we're fine with the rest of the proposed conditions. We're fine with the additional comments that Public Works have added. We've already talked to Public Works about those conditions. A suggestion on the waiver, the findings doesn't specify what it is, but you might just tie it to the architectural plans and say, to the heights shown on the plans. That way you're not giving an open-ended waiver to go any height we might choose. And that's really it for my comments.
And those are the architectural plans that came in with this, correct, Paul?
That's
the ones
correct.
that we have on record today. Okay.
On record, yes.
This is Teresa Davis. I had one other comment just in response. There's been a lot of discussion about the big blank walls, and we did want you to know that we definitely have a two-toned plan, but one of the reasons for not interrupting it with a lot of architectural detail is because we're actually looking a lot into projections, which are another really wonderful way to have immersive art where it would have to be primarily at night. But especially during the much of the year, we have a lot of dark time in Vermont, and we could actually set up projections to have changing. So the side of the building in the back that looks like a big wall would in effect turn into a building that could actually morph and change frequently. So while we're not committing to that, we wanted to, again, just like with some of the other plans, try to build in possibility. And having some cool projections, we're keeping that in mind as we're thinking of that. So that's one of the reasons for thinking of keeping those walls as a nice surface.
Okay, thank you. Robert, was that was that your comment about the walls?
Yes,
Teresa, were you? Okay. Didn't want to lose that. Want to make sure you had an opportunity. At this point, I want to cycle back through anybody from the public that's on board as well. Does anybody have any comment that they would like to share with us or question that they would like to ask? It looks like we've got a pretty big list of folks that are online. I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Aaron, you seeing anything in the chat window?
I did not see anything in the chat, and I just want to remind people if they're trying to speak verbally, with audio, make sure to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Okay, because I'm about to request commission to close the public hearing.
When the time comes for you to review conditions, I have some minor changes I'd like to suggest when we get there.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Seeing no additional activity on the chat window, and I'm not hearing anybody chiming in, I would like somebody in the commission to give me present a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
I'll second that, John Mangan.
Second, moved by Josh, seconded by John. John Mangan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing is closed. Folks, at this stage, this is strictly between staff and the planning commission. And if we have questions, we may reach out to the applicants. But so Sharon, you said you had some suggestions on conditions.
Oops. Oh yeah, I am off mute. Condition 8, line 583. I just would like to end the sentence after submittal and delete, or if a different use occupies the building, because each new use has to go through a different process. It might be that it has to come back to the planning commission, so I just felt that wasn't needed right there. Condition 10, I'd like to see prior to the issuance of a zoning permit deleted, and that's line 587, and just state that the applicant shall obtain the state approvals, and also delete the last two words, 589, for review. We don't need to review the state permits there. I mean, we should have them in our files. It's convenient, but I don't feel like we need it.
When do they need to submit that?
That honestly, you know, they have to get both sets of permits, the state and the town. They can't start construction without both. So there's no really rule out there where it says, okay, you have to go get your state approval first and then you get your town approval. So
I'm just curious, because by taking away the issuance of a zoning permit, the applicant, you're taking that away. So it just says the applicant shall obtain any applicable state approvals.
Yeah,
so,
which is.
But what is the trigger for that? Do they need to do it within a year, 10 years, or do they need to do it before they start? I'm just trying to, I mean, it's kind of an open-ended. I know they have to do it, but when do they need it by?
Again, if you're more comfortable keeping that in there, I still would ask that you delete the last two words, for review. I'm not, going to get hung up on that, because we work, so if you're more comfortable keeping prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, I can live with that, but I don't think that we need to review their permits. And 13, the last sentence, a copy of the state's occupancy approval shall be filed and attached to the town's inspection approval. No, I just think we need the first sentence. Again, I don't issue my town COs without verbal from the state, because the state is so busy. They don't have time to give written COs for quite some time, and they'll just give a verbal. So I would request that the second sentence be gone. And then the last thing is just adding a condition that they need to obtain a sign application to the, to the zoning administrator for review and approval. And again, we use the colored template for the town center, so as it's in the business design control. So I would just add that as a condition.
As a new condition.
As a new condition.
Okay.
And then, I'm sorry, I do have one more. Condition 16, about the landowner or appointed designees shall obtain a zoning permit for special event. I'd like that to say shall obtain approval from the zoning administrator for any special event. And the purpose for that is there's more fees when you get a zoning permit, and then there's an additional 15-day before you get before the event takes place. I would, as I always do, reach out to the police, fire, public works before I give any kind of authorization approval. I can do that in a letter form. I don't necessarily feel it needs to be through the permit process.
Sharon, does that also apply to the request from Public Works to have an event permit?
Yep, Public Works stated that yes, they want to make sure that they're made aware of larger crowds that come, and actually we already do that behind the scenes with the Essex Experience. Sometimes when Peter gets a big name that comes in, he lets us know and we let the police know, and sometimes he'll have to hire extra help for that.
So if we substitute the word event for zoning?
So I was just saying, yep, exactly. So the landowner or appointed designees shall obtain approval. So I'm looking to get rid of a zoning permit and just obtain approval through the zoning administrator. and then pick it right back up for any special event that exceeds the regularly planned building occupancy or traffic.
Okay. So my question is more specifically, since we had Darren mentioned that there was commentary from Public Works to attain, Darren, you can correct me on this, but an event permit, are we talking
Right.
the same thing?
Yep, an
And
event
if that-
permit.
If that's
Sorry.
the case, what is the right language? And who issues the event permits?
I issue the event permits, and it's called a use permit. And again, we just got this memo today, I think.
Yep.
So I haven't really had a chance. The issues from Public Works are definitely making sure that there's adequate police coverage and parking and everything else. So if you guys are feeling that it wants to be a zoning permit, that's fine. It's just
I didn't say zoning permit. I think Sharon.
a zoning permit. Yeah, a zoning permit is what I use. It's a multi-form. It's a building permit. It's a use permit. So we check off other on the zoning permit. So either I would issue them a letter.
Let's chew on that for a minute, and maybe let's just park that one for a second.
It's fine.
So, Darren, if we're going to add in the support for the language, and at this stage, does anybody have any questions or concerns about utilizing the language as proposed by Paul for the waiver, assuming we're in support of the waiver, to utilize the existing architectural designs or plans as submitted? Commissioners, that's a question out to you guys. Is that a reasonable approach at this point from your perspective?
To use Paul's language, yeah, I'm supportive of using Paul's language, tying it to the architectural plans.
Yeah, probably right at the comment after rooftop diner, right? That's where you would tie it to the architectural plans.
I would not even say rooftop diner, because it may not be a diner long term. I mean, in my opinion, we're supporting a waiver for a rooftop use, but the waiver not to exceed the limits of the current architecture or the submitted architectural designs.
Agreed.
Darren? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to hear, if you don't mind bringing Paul back in, I'd like to hear back about exactly what he was talking about on 3A.
Paul?
I thought it was 3. Go ahead.
Well, 3A talks about eliminating the parking or converting the parking along Commonwealth to parallel spaces. And we are fine with that. Obviously, if it turns out in the future we have a parking problem, which would be a nice problem to have, then we can always come back and talk to the board about adding parking along Commonwealth. The portion of Commonwealth that we will change with or without the parking is that we will make the alignment with the future Commonwealth that's coming down from Bove's property. So we'll have that piece will be in place whether or not we add the parking or not. And then 3B, I was just suggesting that you add some sort of condition that requires us to come back and submit to staff a new streetscape plan of what the building and what the landscaping and what the lighting will look like along Commonwealth.
Okay, thanks.
So I'm hearing that we've had, and commissioners chime in, but I'm hearing we've had the big contention or the big item that the decision is the acceptance of the waiver. And I have not heard anyone voice thoughts against the waiver. We've got some qualifying statements for the waiver to keep it, tied to the architectural designs as submitted. And we've got some changes proposed to the conditions that both from the applicant and from the staff. Are there points that are in contention still, or points that we still need clarification on? Darren, from your perspective, is the proposed language for the waiver acceptable?
Absolutely. And also Paul's suggestions about landscaping and streetscape plan, that makes perfect sense to me. One other thing I want to add is just that following Public Works statements about stormwater, add a condition that says, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit, the applicant shall verify that the shared stormwater ponds on the site will accommodate any additional stormwater runoff and amend the maintenance agreement as required. Does that work for you, Paul?
Yes, no issues there whatsoever.
Great.
Okay.
So Dustin.
Yes, Dave.
So we're going in, and which we may be comfortable with, but we're going in a little loose on whether the diner is up in the air or down on the ground, and whether we're going to let the facade stay blank walls. So I mean, I think we should. It's fine if we leave it loose, but I think we should put something in the findings that captures the nature of the discussion so that it's clear. And if we're going to hand it off to staff for final, I'm fine with that. But just something in the findings to capture the tenor of the conversation.
Is that something to the effect of that the commission supports the installation of a diner on the rooftop or the ground level? And also supports a rooftop use to capitalize on the scenic views that are available?
Yeah, I think that would do it. But if we stopped there, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate. It's possible that the decision could be to leave the use on the rooftop, and then there would be no requirement to bring in that streetscape element that we're convinced. So either saying that if the option is to put it on the rooftop, that the requirement would then be to either do the coffee shop or pop-up or something on that streetscape to bring in the pedestrian and visual attention to the streetscape. And maybe Oisa's got some recommendation there.
Oisa? Any thoughts?
I don't have any thoughts off the top of my head, but
okay.
I'm thinking.
Okay. So potentially something like that is that we're looking for a requirement that there be a streetscape engagement of some sort, period.
Yeah, and I think we can reference the hand-drawn sketch that was provided prior to the meeting and say that the Planning Commission supports the ideas that were presented in the hand-drawn sketch in terms of the facade, irrespective of whether the diner remains on the ground or the rooftop.
So let me bat this around. Let me see if I can frame something. And commissioners, I want you to chew on this. Number one, I'm hearing that we want something on the streetscape. We want a streetscape engagement, whether it be a full diner or some sort of kiosk. We want a streetscape engagement. We support the deployment, wrong business right now. We support the installation of the diner on the rooftop. There was a period after the first condition. We do support the installation of a diner on the rooftop and associated waivers for it. We would also support the waivers for the height waiver if another usage was put forth, or we could say that if a usage other than a diner was proposed, that it would have to come back to staff and potentially come to the PC. That's a thought on the waiver and the usage. Not talking about the walls yet.
See, Dustin, it seems like the waiver is more that you're tying it to the architectural plans currently, but you're saying either or on the diner. It's either on the rooftop or it's not, but either way, we're supporting the waiver for the architectural plan with the diner or with the sort of design of the building with the parapet and such.
Yes.
Okay.
I like the idea. Personally, I like the idea of engaging the rooftop, as a part of the experience. If the diner is there, then there needs to be a streetscape and a street level involvement, and of a different sort. And if we're looking at potentially a phased process, then from my limited perspective, I would think something like a kiosk or something, would be something that could be easily deployed at the street level, with the full diner deployment being a later event. But that's a business decision. I'm not involved in that, or I'm not as worried about that. I want something on the street, and I support the use of the roof, and I support a waiver for a proposed use, not any use per se, but a use.
So ditto to all you just said. Do you? I'm starting to not feel comfortable with the way this is rolling out. Similar to what Dave was saying, it's a little loose.
So let's go back to the applicants for a little bit. Paul, Robert, Teresa, that's right. Okay. What do you guys? I mean, we're looking for. What I'm hearing is that we're looking for maybe a little more granularity in what could be done, what the approach would be. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that what I would say is that the magic is inside the building, and our part of our approach is kind of to not overexcite people from the exterior, but that's just a kind of a background comment. I think we totally embrace this idea of engagement along Commonwealth. So I think while we and part of why I said that first part was that we think what's a huge part of the success of this thing is to really kind of exceed people's expectations when they enter this new world, once they get in the door. It's not about overhyping them from the outside. It's about leaving them with an unforgettable experience when they get inside. So from a financial perspective, we're kind of wanting to make sure that we over deliver on the inside. And so it's more of a financial thing that if it sounds loosey, that's where it's coming from. But I think that nothing that you've said, I think we would be happy with committing to some sort of engagement, as you just described, on the east facade. And as you said, that if we can't do it all at once, that we have the option to engage the roof at a later point.
Quick other question. Are you expecting to use the diner independent of the hours of operation of Barbarossa? Or would it only be open when Barbarossa's open?
I don't know if I'm 100% sure about that, but I think whether it's on the roof or the ground, we viewed it as having a separate access. In other words, that it didn't have to be just an internal experience if it was on the roof. Right. That the gift shop and the diner, regardless of where the diner is, would be accessible to the public without purchasing a ticket.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, David, since you were, correctly brought up concerns about the ambiguity, what are your thoughts based on the discussion that's been going on so far? What would be a way through this?
I'm always comfortable with staff's kind of review on this, so I'd be comfortable writing it in a way that says that that the team's going to go back, their design team's going to go back and based on the comments from the Planning Commission and make some decisions and then bring those to staff. And so long as staff doesn't think it violates the nature of the discussion, I'm comfortable. I mean, it's a business design control overlay. Staff has the tools they need to go ahead and approve it. So if we could write it that way, I think that's fine.
Josh, what are your thoughts?
I'm with what David just said about, I'm comfortable leaving it up to staff and framing it in such a way that, yes, we get the, I guess I'll say ground floor activation. But yeah, leaving it to staff's final determination and the business control makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Commissioners, others, John Mangan, John Alden, Jen
Ditto.
Schumacher, John.
Ditto for John Mangan. I don't need to repeat it.
Okay.
John Alden, I'm fine with those proposed, that approach.
Okay. Who's left? Ned.
I'm good with, I think where we're going with this, and leaving the staff to look at that again if we need to.
So we're waiving the height restriction of 40 feet for the proposed addition and potential rooftop diner as outlined in the architectural design submitted that are part of this submission. Is that a fair statement? I'm going to bullet a bunch of these things out. Try to. Darren, you and Sharon better be taking notes because I won't remember this in a minute. Secondly, we strongly advocate the engagement of a streetscape. What are the right words? So maybe you can think of the right word. We want a streetscape involvement that could be. It could be the diner. It could be a kiosk or some other usage. And that was
streetscape engagement.
Yes, and that could be referenced as outlined in the drawings that were an example of using the drawings that were submitted tonight. We'd also, and the commission also would support if the diner was deployed on the street level, they would support the use that we would support the use, an alternate use of the rooftop. As if the uses and have the use approved by staff or planning commission if they can't if it's staff feels okay with it, they can approve it. Otherwise, it would come to the commission. Again, per the architectural designs. What are we missing on these? 3 bullets. The exterior design, exterior facades. David, is that what you were referring to? Is letting that just come back to staff?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, especially just because we don't know the final colors and because it's the business design control overlay.
Okay. So those are 4 findings that we would put into our PC findings section. Do we need, Darren, do we have conditions that exist that would be able to accommodate them? I didn't notice anything for that reflected the waiver as a condition. Would we need a condition stating that height limits were as reflected in the architectural designs, or do we even need to?
That should be in your motion.
And I think that your PC finding language would reflect that.
Okay. What about the uses? We've talked about the streetscape engagement and the potential relocation of the diner, either to the ground floor, to the street level, or to the roof. We need a condition for that. Does staff need to approve that?
I think you could put that under condition 3 by saying the plan shall be revised as follows. Alter the street engagement or the eastern facade to provide better streetscape engagement to be approved by staff who may forward the proposal to the commission if there are concerns, something to that effect.
Okay. And then the wall treatments or the main building facades, again, that probably could be under 3 as well.
Yep.
Or is that 3B? No, that's plantings.
We would just add on to E or renumber as needed.
Okay. So that's just two little addendums onto 3 then. The streetscape and then the wall facades for approval by staff, or the PC if the staff feels it needs to needs a further level of review. Commissioners, does that sound like a reasonable? Our findings are reflected in the conditions.
Good.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Paul, do you have any concerns with this approach?
No, we're good with that. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I would ask for a motion from the commission. Unless there's additional points that we want to bring up. John Mangan, did I see you raise your hand?
Only if I can say I move that we approve this as discussed, because otherwise I have no idea. Sharon, what can we do?
Well done, John.
Okay, so we have John Mangan has moved this as discussed, and that includes the request from Sharon on her findings or on the conditions as she has requested. So her requests are included in that.
Yep. I'll second that.
Okay, moved by John, seconded by John.
And just to be clear, the motion I usually capture as it was warned, but I will include the word waiver in that motion.
Yep. Yes.
So our motion includes the revised additional findings by the Planning Commission section. It includes additional, it includes an E and an F under condition 3. Or is that a B? Yep. There's a new condition for stormwater as presented by Darren. Sharon, you had asked for a new condition as well.
Signage.
Yeah.
Signage.
Yeah.
So it includes 2 new conditions plus the reworking of the existing ones.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep.
Condition 8 and its submittal. Condition 10, remove the for review. Condition 13, eliminate the second sentence completely. Condition 16, instead of saying obtaining a zoning permit, you're obtaining approval from the zoning administrator.
Okay.
Yes.
John's good with that. John's good with that. Any additional comment? All those in favor of the motion as we've hopefully captured, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
I'm super excited about this.
Yes.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everybody involved.
Thank you all.
Ditto.
Planning
Okay.
Commission. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Nice job.
Okay, onward to our next one. I'm not going to ask anybody if it breaks, because if you go on mute, you can take as much break as you want. So the next item on the agenda is a sketch/site plan public hearing for a proposed PUD with 8 residential lots on a portion of the remaining undeveloped land known as 1 LeClerc Woods in the AR zone. Darren, who's going to be running this one down? You?
I will do that again. And I just want to let everybody know I'm sharing the agenda again, just so that we can know where we are. And now I will share the plans for the LeClerc proposal. Give me just a second. And pull that up. So this is a proposal for a planned unit development, a residential planned unit development in the agricultural residential zoning district. This property is currently addressed as 1 LeClerc Woods, formerly 35 Discovery Road. This covers roughly 150 acres around Lemoore Road, Discovery Road, and butting up against the Cirque Highway, Vermont 289. So you can see roughly where we are. The proposal is for an 8-unit PUD clustered on 4.7 acres here in the northeast or west portion of the property. And my understanding is that the applicants are proposing subdividing out 103.8 acres to include that 4.7 acre development. and 99.1 acres of open space, which is shown in green on the master plan, would be included in that parcel to meet the planned unit development requirements. And that would presumably be undeveloped open space, though the plan notes subject to change with possible future development as approved by the Planning Commission. The applicants have also proposed a 20-foot wide, let me find it here, pedestrian path easement along the southern portion of the property abutting the Cirque Highway. This is because on the town plan there is a proposed footpath network shown along this area. So that is part of the proposal. And this was also, the applicants are proposing on-site water and sewer, which I'll show you on this site plan. Sewage disposal field would be on abutting the railroad tracks. Water wells would be in a couple of locations around the edge, and they also have on-site stormwater treatment. A new public road is proposed, and the staff report incorrectly notes that it is proposed as private, but the applicants did propose it as public. Lastly, this was approved for sketch back in 2011 in roughly the same configuration. We are recommending the commission hear this as sketch tonight, though the applicants have done a lot of the work for preliminary. There are just a few things that we want to go through from a larger, bigger picture point of view, and there are a few more preliminary items that have not been included, such as the site survey. On that note, this will also involve a boundary adjustment with the Jarvis property next to the 4.7 acres. It'll be an even swap, so no acreage will change hands. It'll just sort of be a flip-flop. This portion going from LeClerc to Jarvis, shown in gray, the green portion going from Jarvis to LeClerc. This would constitute a boundary adjustment that would be under consent, but because it's part of the subdivision and a PUD, we will hear it as part of that and wait to take any motion on that until final. A couple of things that staff wanted to note about the plan in general. So the statement on the master plan saying that the open space is subject to possible future development is a little concerning to staff. We would really like to just know what is being set as open space, and leaving that open-ended sort of is problematic in terms of approving a PUD with that flexible open space. In terms of the design of the open space, staff notes is very supportive of this area being included because it is noted as highest priority connectivity block in the Vermont Biofinder and Conservation Design Study. It's also a representative physical landscape. So in other words, it's important from a conservation perspective for a variety of wildlife species and from a broader state level of ensuring there's connectivity throughout the state and the region. There's also a very large Class 2 wetland known as Lost Nation Swamp. This is part of the Natural Heritage Inventory assessment that Arrowwood did in 2007 and noted as a very unique resource that should be protected. So we're happy to see that. One thing from a perspective of planning a planned unit development is we're not really sure that residents of this 4.7 acres would walk half a mile up a steep 40-foot cliff and over rough terrain to use this open space, and wouldn't necessarily recommend that they do so because of the wetlands and the wildlife habitat. So we would advise the applicants to consider including some active open space within the 4.7 acres, such as a sports field or community gardens or a gazebo or something to that effect. In terms of the public trail easement, this is part in the town plan, and it has been a point of discussion in this application previously. But we just want to note that this is unlikely to ever be used by the town as a formal trail, that it's really rough terrain. It would be very expensive to cut a trail through this area and even more expensive to maintain and manage access. So the Parks and Recreation Director is a little concerned about taking that on as a capital expense and a management expense. But in theory, there's no harm in having the easement. But there may be some access and sort of trespass issues that we might want to be aware of. There's also the question of the public versus private road. In the previous review, the Planning Commission advocated for this being a private road, which would reduce the amount of maintenance by public works. And that's something we want to make sure is formalized or finalized or understood that it's going to be private or public. And lastly, we just want to note the layout of these dwellings, though it is very much of good design and clustered and creates a neighborhood feel. We just want to point out that if these were ever going to be subdivided in the future as either separate lots or potentially as footprint lots, that would be difficult to do under current regulations, which don't allow footprint lots for single unit detached dwellings. And the lots that they could create out of this would not meet the dimensional standards in the district. So no problem with the proposal as it stands, just thinking about the future for the applicant. That's it for staff at the moment. We may have some changes to discuss with the staff report once we get to that point.
Commissioners, any questions for staff?
None here.
Okay.
Nope.
Paul, are you presenting on this as well?
I am.
Fire away.
So this should look familiar to most of the commissioners. Obviously, we had a number of go-arounds with this, and I think the majority of you probably walked that trail easement with us up over the cliff that Darren talks about the last time we were in for a preliminary. If you recall, there was a lot of discussions. We were pushing hard for a private road. We had quite a bit of agreement with the commissioners on the issue, but Public Works was pretty adamant about it being a public road to comply with the public work standard. So we have agreed to make it a public road. It meets all the public work standards. We've talked to Public Works about it a number of times. The cul-de-sac at the end is a one-way cul-de-sac to try to minimize the amount of impervious surface we have. The layout is pretty much the same as what we saw before. We did add garages to the units. Before they were basically just a small, simple unit with no garage, but these, as shown, have a one-car garage. The stormwater is quite a bit more extensive since we were in last time. The state rules have changed. There's actually 2 constructed gravel wetlands proposed at the entrance, paying quite a bit of attention to the amount of water that comes off the slope above to make sure that that volume is adequately treated before it's discharged across the road. A comment on the footprint lots. We do understand that your current regulations only allow multi-unit to have footprint lots. We realize you can't change that at this point in time. I would certainly encourage the board, as you have a list of things that you're changing in the zoning regulations, that be one that you consider. I'm sure David can weigh in on this, but probably the most popular house style we see now in Chittenden County are these single unit carriage style homes. And they're very difficult to sell as a condominium project. It's much easier to sell as a footprint lot. So pretty much every other town in Chittenden County allows single unit footprint. So I would encourage you to potentially look at your regulations and maybe get that up to date with the surrounding towns. We have reviewed the conditions approval. We're fine with them as written. That's all I have.
Wow. All right, commissioners. Thoughts, questions?
Dustin, it's David.
Yes.
So I'm going to fess up. I don't remember on which end of this I stood last time we reviewed this. So if I'm flip-flopping, I apologize. But I get that we're building this to the public road standards and that Public Works would want that. I'm struggling a little bit about why the town would take over a road on a piece of private property for one owner for a bunch of rental units. I don't think that taxpayers should be burdened with the maintenance cost of that going forward. I could see it if it was sold, if the units were sold. So that's the only thing I'm struggling with. And I'll ditto what Paul said. He's right. Every other town allows footprint lots for small homes, and it's a popular way to convey property. That's all I got.
Okay. Commissioners, again, I don't know if everybody on here, most everybody on here has seen this before. So what are your thoughts at this stage? Ned. John Alden, you jumped in first. Go for it.
I did. Well, I haven't seen this one before. I did. I was not sitting on the board when this came through before. So I looked at it. I had no trouble with it. I understand some of the issues that you're facing, but I didn't see it before, so I didn't know any of those, and I still have no problem with it. The footprint lot question is a question for another day, so I'm fine.
Okay. Shoo.
That's a record.
I know.
I'm good. Just would sort of echo some of the stuff that Darren was concerned about with the acreage in the upper portion of the property being, right in the heart of this conservation design sort of primo area. That's all I've got.
Okay. John Mangan.
I'm good. I just want to echo what David said about the town road concerns, but I don't know what place we have to debate that. So, but other than that, I'm fine.
Ned.
Yeah, I think it looks like a reasonable proposal, and I'm sort of surprised that we're going to take it over as a public road. We don't usually do that, and the rest of the site, I've looked at it. I go by there a lot. It's a sort of crazy big plot of land with a climbing cliff practically in behind it. So maybe it's they're making good use of that space.
There was if I remember correctly, at one point when they were doing some work, there was a nice construction road that was done up through there that had to be taken out again.
Dustin, what David? It's one more thing. I think some discussion would be warranted around the open space issue. I mean, we're doing a PUD, and I too echo staff's concern that of not locking down that acreage up there on the top. I'm less concerned, echoing staff's comments about the access to that open space, but given its value in terms of the biodiversity and the corridor and everything that's up there, I would really like to see, if we're given the PUD, granting that, I'd like to see that locked up.
Okay.
That's one of the conditions that we're fine with, that note be removed and that we commit to a fixed open space.
That's great.
So we're okay with that.
Thank you, Paul.
Great. Josh.
Just basically dittoing what David said, what a lot of people said about the open space, which seems to have been resolved, and then the idea of the road, but I don't know what sort of standing we have. With the overall project, though, I'm fine.
Okay.
We don't have to take that road, do we, Dustin? I mean, that doesn't have to be a public road.
Well, that's what I was going to go. That's what I wanted to circle back to. That's really the only thing that I'm finding is a point of contention in this. And I mean, if Paul's good on the open space, fixing that up, the only thing I'm hearing is the public road aspect. So.
May I ask, Paul had mentioned that he's had several conversations with Public Works. Can you shed some light on their thought for that, Paul?
Well, I think it goes back to the public works standards that Dennis weighs in that they're not waivable by the planning commission. And the public works standards clearly says that any road 300 feet or longer or serving a certain number of units must be a public road and must be built to public works standards. So nothing's really changed since the argument we had back in 2011 or 2012, whenever we were in front of you before with this. It's in the end, Dennis didn't want to move at all on his public work standards. They haven't changed since then. And so the final thing was the board, you folks were reluctant to try to overrule Dennis. And that's a good policy in general. And so at the end, we just decided that the only way we can really go forward and get everybody to agree is just to bite the bullet and say, okay, fine, we'll build a public road. And would we prefer a private road? Yes, we certainly would. It would cost us less money. It would take up less space. You know, there's lots of good things about having a private road. But unfortunately, I think unless Public Works changes its mind, that they have the right to require it to be public, and that's what we're proposing.
So I'm going back to the staff report. This is Dustin on line 278. This is going back to 2011, and the PC at that time agreed that the road could remain a private road, but needed to be constructed to standard so that it was, the level of service, of quality, and so forth was such that it would not be a substandard road. Why, Darren, maybe this is a question back to you. Where is our resistance to following that approach?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So what the staff report says is that back in when you approved this as sketch in 2011, you made a finding that it does not need to be a public road because the planned unit development standards state the following roads may be required as public roads dedicated to town, et cetera, including the principal entry to the planned unit development, non-looped or cul-de-sac roads of 300 more feet in length, and other roads may be private if approved by the Planning Commission. So because the first statement there, the following roads may be required, it's unclear in these regulations that things have to go one way or the other. It's left to the discretion of the Planning Commission. Although I would say, based on the language that's in there, it seems to indicate that the first few listed items should be public roads. Other roads may be private if approved by the Planning Commission. So this is, again, a matter of difference between our zoning regulations on one hand and the public works specs on the other hand. And just in general, it comes down to a policy of, again, do we want to take on the maintenance of roads in rural areas that are not served by that many units? And is that a cost that should be borne by the town? It's also a question of, can the town ensure that developments that are made have adequate access and services? So I don't think that this is the time to have that high-level policy discussion, and I think Public Works should weigh in on that personally, but I think requiring it as public for now is a safe route in terms of consensus among staff and the applicants. And this is also only sketch, so if there are changes that need to be made, they can be made at preliminary or final.
So this is Dustin again, and I guess one of my follow-up to that is that in the next section, we're talking about sidewalks and how this isn't really, no sidewalks are being proposed, and it's not really, may not be necessary. We're calling it a public street. We're sort of playing both sides of the, we're playing both sides on this one. We're saying it has to be a public street, but it's not really a public street, so it doesn't need a sidewalk. Is how I'm reading it, and that's why I'm questioning this direction right now. This doesn't seem crisp enough for me, right, to be able to. I don't see anything personally to stop this. Yeah, I know. That word makes me grin too. I don't say anything that I have really any concerns about this application. I'm just concerned about what we may be doing as far as, making the road be more than the PUD. Anyways, rest of the commission, we still have to open this up in a minute, but what are the rest of your commissioners thinking? I mean, David, you brought up the road. What are your thoughts on it beyond what you've already said, or if?
Mine just falls to I'm fine with there being road standards, whether it be for a private road or a public road. What I struggle with is if we're not going to force these to meet the lot standards that they can be sold down the road. I don't think it's fair to ask the taxpayers of Essex to take on this road. I mean, I know that there'll be 8 taxable residences there, but I think this should remain a private road that the landowner has control and maintenance of.
That sounds like finding language.
It does.
Does anybody else have any comments they want to add to this right now? We do have to open the public hearing, so Elisa, do you have
my comment on it?
Go ahead, Paul.
My comment would be I'm not sure that you can override the public work standards. I mean, that's where it came down the last time we had this discussion. Is you folks were all on board. We were on board with this should be a private road, and we were going that way, and then we got stopped dead in our tracks when weighed in and said, hey, this is what the public works standards say, and you don't have the right to override them. So if we're going to go that way, I would just ask staff to reach out to Dennis again and see if his position has changed since the last time.
And maybe we can even take it a little step further and speak with others as well, and get an opinion.
Well, and since I brought this up, I'll just say I'm not going to die on my sword on this. Dennis is one of the smartest guys I know, and he has a budget. And if he thinks that at the end of the day he can take this road over and that it should be part of his responsibility, and that's what he wants, then I'll keep my mouth shut.
Dusty, this is an internal conversation that we really need to have with Public Works.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Given that this is sketch, I think we can still put an indication on here in our findings. If the commission is supportive of, if still supportive of treating this as a private road for the conditions that Dave, shared, that might be different. It might not go into effect, and it might not be replicated or represented in a condition. But I think it's still valuable to include it that the commission as a whole, if we are, is supportive of this street being a private road with rental units. Other commissioners, anybody have any other thoughts on this? All right, this is a public hearing, so I would take a motion to open the public hearing.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Who was the second? Ned, okay, moved by Josh, seconded by Ned. All those in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing is open. If anybody is on the line, go ahead.
Remind you to make sure everybody signed in. Had the oath.
I didn't catch that, Sharon, I'm sorry.
Just making sure that everybody has taken the oath that Josh administered.
Okay. So if we have anybody in the audience that would like to share comment with us, please say so, or either sign into the chat or just speak up.
This is Marie Froschel.
Okay.
I basically am just looking for a little clarification. This has all been very interesting. Am I understanding that these units are going to be rental units?
Darren? Paul?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, initially they will be rental units with the possibility that somewhere down the line we could sell the units we'd have to establish a condominium plan in accordance with Vermont state statute to do that. But
So-
initially, they're rentals.
So if you try to turn them into condos, do they meet the zoning regulations for the lot size?
If we turn it into a condo plan, they wouldn't be separate lots.
So Marie, this is Darren. I want to chime in real quick and say that under the current proposal, they could not make them footprint lots. They couldn't make separate lots that met dimensional standards either. However, they could still sell them as condominium units, sort of internal wall condos where there's no land associated with that unit, but it is the building itself, essentially.
All right, thank you. The other thing is, what I'm hearing is that the commission has some concern about the open land and that at some point in the original proposal, it could be developed down the road. And am I hearing that people are concerned about that and they think that the open land should always be kept open in perpetuity?
That's the direction we're going on this one, yes.
And this is Darren. Just to clarify, Marie, I'm going to share the master plan again so you can see that because I want to highlight that. Let me just pull it up. Where is it? It's not what I was looking for. I apologize. So the green area is what's shown as the open space. That's 99.1 acres of this 103-acre parcel that will be taken out of the existing 150 acres. So you'll notice on this plan there are a couple of lots here. It's hard to see with all the topo lines, but lot 21, which is 23.76 acres, and is sort of roughly rectangular in shape, would be reserved for future development, as would lots 18 and 25 through 29, which could potentially happen off of this existing gravel road known as LeClerc Woods. It's a private road serving several of these other existing lots.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Yep. So there's proposal that those be open for future development under this master plan. However, there's a guarantee that the applicants appear to have agreed to that the 99.1 acres more to the east and northeast and southeast essentially would remain undeveloped permanently if this PUD is approved.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Sherry Larson.
Yes.
Hi. My name is Sherry Larson. I live at 11 Discovery Road, and I've been reviewing the documents and listened to the entire presentation. I understand the rationale of a planned unit development. I think, they're basically a good idea. But in my view, I think too many single-family homes are being squeezed into this lot. I'm concerned about down the road if there was pressure to sell them as single lots. We've already talked about how there's not room for sidewalks, or it doesn't quite meet the standards. I'd feel more comfortable if there were 7 units instead of 8. It's a pretty dense development that, looking at the surrounding houses, is a bit inconsistent. So the number of units is of some concern to me. But the biggest issue is something that has been discussed, and that is the open space acreage. And I think that's essential to nail that down. And I really like the staff suggestion that a conservation easement to a certified land trust occur. And in the conditions as written up by staff, it says, which may take the form of a conservation easement. And I would suggest changing that to shall, and requiring that easement be in place before development occurs. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional comments or questions?
There was a request to speak from Abby Nelson. Abby, if you can hear us, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, this is Abby Nelson. I totally agree with Sherry that it should be shall, not a may, in terms of the conservation area. And also the proposed pathway to that conservation area, if it's a private road or if there is no parking, what really is the access to that area? If it's not meant to have access, in other words, it's just an open area, fine. But I can't see going up that embankment. I have walked along that path by going through woods from Lost Nation Road and getting up there from the cul-de-sac will be difficult, and how excited with the people on the cul-de-sac, whether they're renting or owning, be to have folks trying to access that area. If it's not meant to be accessed, then why is there a walkway or whatever we call it, open area to get there? And I agree with Sherry about the density. And I also am concerned about this development being the opening to the promise for further development of the other areas. I understand why the current development is asked for, and I'm not opposed to it except for its density, but I don't understand why it's tagged to the permission to develop from the other direction to that area. Thank you.
I'm not sure what we can respond to on that.
Maybe Darren can speak to the master plan that was approved, the last time it was approved. So she gets an understanding of how.
Let's Darren or Sharon or whatever, Darren, you might be on mute, but if we're talking about the easement, the access easement, that's a request. It's not, I don't believe there's an expectation that it's going to be an as-built walkway or pathway at this point. It is an easement to allow access, potential future access.
That is correct, Dusty. That was the rationale behind requesting it, and that's the rationale behind many of the requests for pedestrian easements in developments. They're based on the town plan and a map of pedestrian and cross-country and other non-motorized and snowmobile trail networks that have been planned out. There has been a long history of the town trying to get a pedestrian or bike access along the Cirque Highway. The state is resistant to doing that because it's a limited access highway that is difficult to accommodate bikes and pedestrians. So this is an alternative to that. It would allow access to this woods and trails potentially, but as we've noted, the terrain is pretty rough, and there are difficulties in finding a good access point. So that could be something that the applicants, if they're willing to propose parking somewhere in the 4.7 acre development site. I don't, as Abby said, I don't know that our Parks and Rec department would support that just because it's another place to maintain, it's another access to sort of manage, and there's a lot of, there could be a lot of traffic going through that area that may not be welcomed by the residents. So in terms of the planning and, PUD principles at play here, I think staff is certainly okay with having that be a conservation area, not a recreation area. We have plenty of places to recreate that are in undeveloped areas. So that's sort of my 2 cents on that. In terms of the future possible development, the master plan shows that was approved at the last time a subdivision for 35 Discovery Road when LeClerc Woods was approved. The future lots that are proposed are within the state mapped connectivity block. In terms of the way that those areas are mapped and researched, it seems like as long as there's still some sort of forest habitat cover and some riparian area cover to provide a way for habitat or for animals and wildlife to move, it would serve its purpose, and future development could take place without infringing that, although any development is going to have an impact on forests and wildlife habitat. And we certainly would rather see less fragmentation of interior forest than more. So that's sort of a question that's really about design of the subdivision and what could or should be accommodated and how much more clustering can be achieved. But either way, it looks like there's a fairly extensive road that's already there but would be upgraded to serve future development.
This is Abby Nelson again. If I appreciate trying to make easements for properties to show that there's recreation or whatever, I don't necessarily feel it's genuine if you put in an easement that really is not accessible. And even if you take away the rugged terrain, I can't imagine people in the cul-de-sac will appreciate people parking to access that easement, if it's their right to access that easement. So to put it in there and say, here we have this easement, unless it's for town easement, as in the town support systems, I think it's sort of fake. And the other thing is that I'm hoping that the commission is thinking about, as you mentioned, Darren, the areas that the wild animals are in, particularly the deer, who do a lot of traversing in that area to go from one area to another. We certainly have a lot of deer trails on Lost Nation, and I would appreciate that being considered, not because there needs to be the population we have necessarily, but that we don't make it so narrow that it's virtually impossible to maintain the natural wildlife.
Dusty, I want to note there's another, and thanks Abby for that. There is one more person who would like to speak.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Keith Morley. I live at 21 Highview Drive in Essex, and I was just hoping to see the plan again to see like the relationship to the 21 Highview Drive. It was up there for a second, and I think the map was a little out of date. It said Fitzpatrick, and I think that's my property right now.
Keith, this is Darren. I'm sharing that plan right now. Do you want me to share the more detailed one, or is this sufficient for you?
That's great. I was just like trying to picture where the access road will be, and I think it is. Yeah, it's like right at that corner by, it's like, there's like a yellow house and then there's a like private road after that. I think am I correct on that?
So yes, the proposed road for this development would be squared up with Highview Drive. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one of the primary items that we're looking at is the conservation of that larger tract, of the larger acreage. And I think Darren, you used the right word when we're looking for conservation, not necessarily recreation. So to your point about, an easement being fake, an easement is allows for the future access, unencumbered access if we need it. If it's needed, it's there. If we don't have it now, then there would not necessarily be any opportunity to access that property in the future. And I feel that this case, the applicant, and what Paul had said earlier, was agreeable to removing the variability from the remaining free space and allow it to be a fixed acreage, which allows it to be considered a conservation easement, a conservation, forget the right term. Darren can put the right terminology in there. But it's something that it may not be accessible, useful, or a good recreation spot, but it will provide habitat protection, wildlife corridors, all that will be maintained.
I think that not all easements are for public access, and in this one, as you just said, would be more of a conservation purpose easement.
And Matt, this is Darren. I want to jump in and say that Sharon's right. There are two different types of easements that we're talking about here. One is public access for foot, by foot or non-motorized access, and then conservation easement, which is a very different animal. It's essentially taking away the development rights of that property and giving those to a land trust, presumably, who would ensure that there no development happens. Without going into too much detail about that, it's basically saying that area won't be developed and the land trust is going to enforce that condition. I would not recommend that easement be made to the town because we do not have the ability to enforce a conservation easement and monitor that the way that a land trust would. I do want to point out that there's no guarantee that a land trust would accept a conservation easement on this property. That's something we'd have to explore with them, knowing that it's important wildlife habitat and significant or an interesting physical landscape. They probably would be, but that might be something we want to explore with before preliminary and final. And that, of course, would be up to the landowner and the applicant. We don't want to necessarily, I would want that to be a conversation with them at this point. So in terms of why the condition was phrased as a may, it's just making it so that conservation could still happen even if a land trust wouldn't accept that easement.
Okay.
This is Abby Nelson again. Why not make the easement from Discovery Road? Is it impossible to do because of the swamp area?
Abby, that is correct. I'll pull the plan up again so we can see that. So looking at the portion that is, there's two portions that front on Discovery Road. One is where LeClerc Woods comes in and provides access to certain properties that already are there and potentially these future ones as shown on the master plan. The other part is of Class 2 wetland that's part of the Lost Nation Swamp Complex. There's also a Velco power line easement that runs through that portion. So it is already open to some extent, but it is not exactly accessible. And we also have to make sure that that didn't conflict with Velco's need to maintain and be safe in that area. So the only other option would be this LeClerc Woods curb cut, essentially, and it's up to the applicants whether they want to offer, or where they want to put that easement, and that's a negotiation with the Planning Commission to some extent.
Have they provided options to that easement?
What was the question, please?
No, we haven't provided options. Back when we first started this project, that trail easement along the Cirque High was shown on the town plan. It was agreed at that point in time that we should provide that easement in that location. So there's never been a discussion of locating it in a different spot.
I have a question when there's time.
Please go ahead.
Well, I'm looking at lots 28, 27, 26, and maybe 25. It says near the existing gravel road, the LeClerc Woods Road, I guess, it says Class 3 wetlands. How does that impact the development of those lots, future development?
Paul, I can take a whack unless you want to answer that.
I'll take a whack at that.
Let me take a whack first for a minute. We're talking future development. Are we talking? I want to make sure we don't go step outside of this application.
That would be outside of this application.
Okay, then I don't want to go into an area that's not on the table in front of us tonight.
I understand.
So with all, I mean, valid questions, but not in the context of what's in front of us tonight.
And Maria, we can talk with you about that offline.
Okay.
After the meeting. Yep.
Thank you. So I want to bring this, do we have any additional questions regarding the application that's on us tonight? Not, I want to hold on public input for a few moments. I'm going to bring this back to the commission. Commissioners and staff, what are your thoughts on the application as it's in front of us? This is sketch plan, and we should have some latitude on this. Thoughts? Let's go around the board. Owiso, I'm looking. What are your thoughts on this at this stage?
My only thought is that future lot issue. I think that future lot should be taken off of any stamped approved drawings for this project.
Future lot that's part of the master plan, that's not part of this application?
Right.
It's part of the master plan, so let's make sure.
Right, it may be part of their master plan, but if it's not part of this application, then I mean, maybe we can make a note saying that there's nothing that that suggests approval of that. Or.
And to be clear, this is a master plan, not a plat or a survey. It's basically a conceptual plan showing where development might happen.
No, I get that, but
Nancy Baker.
No, I'm in the commission.
Exiting.
Right? Okay, Nancy Baker stepping out. Commissioners, Ned, what are your thoughts?
I think that the development as presented is fine. If they want to do a private road and build it to the public road standards, I wouldn't accept for that. If the town is willing to accept it, that's fine. I think I'd probably agree with Awisa that we may want to leave that other part off of this at this point until we get some other actions up there. I think Darren makes a good point between recreation and conservation, and I'm not sure at least I haven't, I'm not that familiar with the site to really discuss that.
Okay. Shu, how are you feeling on this?
Having similar problems with my mouse there, trying to unmute, but I sort of want to remind everybody that open space does not mean public space. So if we're talking about a conservation area that's part of this open space plan, that's part of this application, it doesn't mean that it's open to everybody just running roughshod over the thing anyway. So the point about the pathway easement along the cliff, as it's been, I'll put that in air quotes, it's sort of irrelevant. Part of what we're trying to do here is or what the applicant's trying to do here is use the PUD to develop a small piece of property to make use of it. And the benefit, and maybe we don't agree with the density or whatever it is, or the public road or the private road, but the big bonus here is that there's an opportunity to take this open space and turn it into a conservation area, regardless of whether it goes into, into some kind of a trust or not. It's a big opportunity. That's what I see. So if we change the language in the green portion on M1 of the master plan, and take out the possible future development language out of there, that would be awesome in my mind, and the rest of it is fine. I do think that we should take the issue. This is an aside. Take the issue of footprint lots on PUDs and put it in the parking lot. Let's get back to that at some point down the road. That's all I got.
Okay. Josh.
I'm just going to ditto what Shu said and add that I think in a finding perhaps we should put in, with respect to the private versus public road, just once again push Dennis and say, are you absolutely certain you want this to be a public road? Because we're on the same page, developer and commission, that maybe it shouldn't be.
I took a swipe at some language, Josh, that at some point we can maybe munch on.
Okay, I'm all good then.
Okay. John Mangan.
Ditto what Josh said. That was really my biggest concern, was the public versus private road.
Okay. John Alden.
I get to ditto what Shu and Josh said this time, so I'm all set.
Wow. David.
Ditto.
Okay, we got a bunch of ditto. So let the staff report read ditto. So it feels like from a sketch perspective, we can go with what's written for the road. It would be good for the, staff to confirm with Dennis that that there is or is not an option to classify this as a private road.
Do you want to hear some proposed language in the findings just to see if it resonates with you and everybody?
Please.
So under findings, given that the housing units are not on individual lots that are intended for future sale, the Planning Commission desires that the road servicing the units be built to Public Works road standards, but that the road remain privately maintained. The Planning Commission supports the applicant working with Public Works on this issue. The Planning Commission is in support of the road becoming public should the units be sold through a condominium conversion or the applicant coming back for individual lot approval.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. That sounds great.
I think we also would support the easement into the remaining lands and having the remaining lands be firmed up as a conservation, secured for conservation purposes by a mechanism. You suggested conservation trust or land trust, but a conservation setup should be there.
Just to clarify, the other option for that would be both the Planning Commission approval prohibiting future development and also a deed restriction, which could be reviewed by our town attorney, but it's more of a matter for title searches to enforce in the town than the land trust.
So maybe that simply stated that the Planning Commission supports the formation of a conservation area, either as using land trust or deed restrictions.
Yes, we don't want to be tied to a land trust, particularly if we are not able to get them to accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul's right on that one. You got to be careful about tying that in too hard.
What about a finding like this? The Planning Commission supports a deed restriction and the easement into the remaining lands and establishing conveyance of the lands into an approved land trust if available.
Again, remembering this is sketch, that pretty clearly identifies the intent and the expectation. Do we, as a commission, does anybody have a concern with the, as presented by some of the public, the number of units or anything of those lines at this stage?
I'll just offer my real estate perspective, which is higher density and smaller lots like this are becoming more popular, and the 10 acres out on out in the country is not as desirable, or there's a market for both, but these tight lots with higher density is definitely becoming more and more popular.
Okay. At this point, the public hearing is still open, so I would take additional comments from, if there's anybody still on board that wants to engage us, please do.
The comment about the road, or the statement about the road, I thought was spot on, but I just wondered whether there shouldn't be a sort of comma subject to written approval or something by Public Works. And I know again that it's early on, but I think that we should definitely leave the ball in Public Works' court to be able to the yay or nay that concept.
And I wouldn't disagree with you, because I think that's where we were trying to get to.
Yeah. No, I thought actually on the fly, I was just like, holy moly, what legal background does David have? Because that was spot on. I mean.
Okay. So
Elisa, does the sentence that said the Planning Commission supports the applicant working with Public Works on this issue, does that cover it? I mean, I was trying to lob it back to them.
Yeah, I guess it does. I think I just focused more on the second half, where we talked about the different configurations or the different ownership situations that would trigger a public versus private road. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that
one of the good things is that this being a sketch, is we don't need to be that specific right now. Both the applicant and staff know that where we're headed, and
that's perfect.
We're lobbing it back to you guys.
Yeah. So based on Elisa's comments, I changed the order of the sentences and I ended the paragraph of the finding with the Planning Commission supports the applicant working with Public Works to resolve this issue.
Perfect.
This is Abby Nelson. Could you add to that Public Works doing an analysis of that road to those developed units to Lemoore and the effect on Lemoore, seeing that it's still a dirt road?
Come again on that? I'm not sure I understand.
That would be, I mean, Public Works evaluates all curb cuts and traffic analysis and how the trips and the entry onto another public road get impacted.
So that's automatic, is what you're saying?
Correct.
And Abby, this is Darren. I just want to clarify, in a phone conversation I had with Public Works, they did indicate that a traffic study would be required at preliminary, which is the next stage.
That's great, because that road gets a lot of abuse, and 8 more units with potentially 2 to 3 more people in each unit could significantly impact that road.
Okay. Good questions. Good comments. Thank you very much. Okay, with that,
I would move to close the public hearing.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Moved by David, seconded by Josh. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing is closed. Okay, folks, commissioners, we are at the point in the evening that if if there isn't additional discussion we need to have, I would take a motion on this application, the sketch plan application.
So I'll move approval of the sketch/site plan for Linda LeClerc for a plan unit development with 8 residential lots on a portion of the remaining undeveloped lands known as LeClerc Woods in the AR zone, tax map 73, parcel 1. Staff report as written. And Sharon, I can email you these 2 paragraphs, but under Planning Commission findings, finding 1, given that the housing units are not on individual lots that are intended for future sale, the Planning Commission desires that the road servicing the units be built to Public Works, public road standards, but that the road remain privately maintained. The Planning Commission is in support of the road becoming public should the units be sold through a condominium conversion or the applicant coming back for individual lot approvals. The Planning Commission supports the applicant working with Public Works to resolve this issue. Finding 2, the Planning Commission supports a deed restriction and the easement into the remaining lands and establishing conveyance of the lands into improved land trust if available. The rest is written with, I know there was a change to removing future lot from the master plan, I believe.
I'm personally at this point, I don't know if we should, I mean, we're not looking at this from a master plan perspective, are we?
You will be at final.
But not at sketch.
Well, we put it in the, I believe we oh,
Yeah,
no, we didn't. Sketch in public. Yeah, we just said sketch site plan, so.
So I'm thinking that if on this one, if staff, per Elisa's comment, wants to have that removed, that should just be done as part of the staff review with the applicant for the next phase. That can be a discussion with them. I don't know that we should be mucking around with it tonight because we'd never warned it as a master plan amendment.
Good point.
Okay, that's the language. David, was that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody second that?
I'll second it.
Moved by David with language, seconded by Shu or John?
Shu.
Shu. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Good night.
We are moving on to the next one.
Thanks, Paul.
Oh, we'll see you the next time.
And thanks to the public for participating.
Yes. We have the minutes from April 30th on the docket. Let me get them up. Did we get a motion for the minutes from April 30th?
I move we approve the minutes from April 30th, 2020.
Okay, I'm bringing them up now. Do we have any
I'll
corrections?
second it. I'll second it.
Moved by Shu, seconded by Josh. Does anyone want to introduce corrections to the minutes?
I just have one thing.
Okay,
John?
page in line.
I'm just, there's no mention that I recused myself from the Bove one. I just thought that should be in there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my bad. I will go in and enter that.
Okay. Are there any other corrections that anyone wants to introduce? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes as moved and corrected, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Let me just see something. Who do we have on the line? Okay. Looks like we just have us right now. Okay. Any other business?
I have a couple things. I'd like to have a motion that either has the chair or acting chair be able to sign approval letters and or minutes, approved minutes, as long as we operate virtually. And the second thing is I wanted to ask if I should try to pull together a site visit for the Susie Wilson Road PQ. I think it's 84 Susie Wilson on the May 28th, or if we want to push it out a little bit. I haven't even checked with the applicant to see if they're available, but we have to put the warning in very soon. And we now have groups of 10 that can go. And honestly, you can, have 2 clustered groups of 10 the way I see it, but so thoughts on that, on both of those?
Is anybody unable to digitally sign?
Jeff Jackson is my maternal grandfather.
What was that?
I have no idea. It was funny though.
Someone's background.
Somebody's got a party line.
Is there anybody who can't digitally sign a document?
Or print it out and scan it.
I hate to say that, John, but I'm not sure what you're talking about.
It can be done many different ways. You can import a picture of your signature. You can do it through a PDF program like Acrobat or Foxit. There's a bunch of different ways. You can use DocuSign, which you sometimes have to pay for. But
I have the ability to provide signing through our real estate software called .loop.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff out there. There's a bunch of it that's free. It's really pretty easy to do. But I'm fine with having a proxy signature on stuff. I'm just curious, like, is it necessary?
Well, we're still working from home right now. So I think for us at the moment, it would be easier to just have to worry about getting one signature. I'm having to run into the office usually once a week for permitting reasons, but we can certainly make whatever works, whatever the PC wants to do. Happy to do it.
What is the select board doing?
I don't know. I know my zoning board letters we send off to the chair. Only the chair signs the letter, and we do that via email.
Yeah, Sharon, I'm not that far away. I mean, you leave them on the doorstep over there, and I can sign them.
Let's
I think it's good for you to go into the office once a week. We all need to start thinking about getting back to it, once a week. Come on.
Yeah, no, I'm not objecting, just saying that I have to go in for certain duties. So I can certainly open the door for people. We can do it electronically. I was just trying to think what is convenient for everybody right now, because it's virtual and because the office is technically closed. I was just thinking making Dusty come in and sign.
I'm totally fine with it, Sharon. I would just, I have not been at home this entire time. I've been at work every day, a lot of times by myself, but I've been signing an awful lot of things and training and getting other people to sign digitally. It's not difficult, but no. I'm totally fine with doing a proxy. I just wonder about statute and like how long we were going to do that for. Mm-hmm. I'm not even trying to be a stickler. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Whatever anybody wants, we're willing to accommodate. So
well, how about, we don't have it worked out yet, so I don't know that we can answer it today. Do we need a motion each time, or if you did a roll call email when you needed something signed?
Well, I've got 2 letters for you for signature for tomorrow, that from 2 weeks ago.
Are we required by statute to all sign this stuff?
No, we've had the chair sign alone for various reasons throughout the years. And honestly, if a letter goes by and it doesn't get signed, the minutes become the approval letter. So again, whatever your pleasure is, but I would have to send something out to all of you tomorrow to get these signatures so we can get these. People are already asking for their letters.
So I would recommend that we do one of two things. We either authorize Dustin to share so that it becomes a coordination just between you and Dustin, or I will offer, if you want to use electronic signing, I can have that set up in 10 minutes tomorrow using .loop, because it's something I do every day for real estate contracts. So
right. Just fire it off and everybody
clicks and signs. Yep.
Yeah.
So
and
totally.
I only need 4 signatures.
And I will also say our IT department might have this capacity as well, so we can check with them, see what the select board might be doing. If it's easy, we'll set it up for that way.
So how about a motion that says that, I move that staff investigate a resolution to getting approvals and letters signed, and whether it can be facilitated easily electronically, and if not, that the PC authorizes the chair to sign on behalf.
Sharon, when do you need, how late are these? You've got 2 letters to be signed right now, correct?
2 letters, yeah.
And how delayed have they been?
No, they haven't been delayed. This is our next. This is typically normal. You would be signing them tonight, normally.
Okay, so let's go with if Dave can set it up, great. And if not, then I can sign them on Monday morning.
I second David's motion.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. David's going to do something.
And then the second question was, shall I try to set up a site visit for May 28th? Do you guys know your calendar, or do you want to email me on that, or?
This is Shu, I'm in.
Bring it up now. May 28th.
John Mangan, I'm available.
Yeah, I'm available.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I can't confirm yet, but I'll try to get that to work.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I expect beer and hand sanitizer and.
Vodka is hand sanitizer.
There's alcohol.
Vodka is hand sanitizer.
Just to comment on the last issue, the Village Planning Commission only has the chair sign.
As a rule?
Yeah.
It's been brought up before. We had that discussion. I know we've had it in the last few years, but I think we wanted to show, a greater level of engagement.
Dustin, your ears got long.
It's 9:30. We're pretty engaged.
Woof.
He's a good puppy.
That sounded like a motion.
Good puppy. All in favor?
Aye.
I didn't even hear a second, but.
I second it. So, meeting is adjourned.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you again,
Lisa,
Darren. Awesome job.
Thanks to everybody.
Nice job.